Leadership sounds great on paper, but it's more than a title, and it's definitely more than authority. It demands responsibility, awareness, and a willingness to grow. It's not about having power over people, but influence with people. Before you call yourself a leader, I want you to ask yourself this question. Am I actually guiding people toward their potential, or am I simply barking out orders in order to meet my own goals and objectives? If that question made you stop and think, and I hope that it did, then you're in the right place because that's something that we're going to explore today. Welcome to Crossroads and Catalyst, the podcast with Shanita B. I am your host. This is where we discuss the thoughtful, wise, and strategic perspective at a crossroads can be the catalyst for change. I, like many of you, have found myself at a crossroads when it comes to management and leadership because there definitely is a difference. I've had positions where I've simply managed, and I've also had positions where I've led. And I can tell you, it requires a lot of consideration because I've had to really think about the kind of leader that I want to be and how I want to engage team members and even colleagues. And if I want to be seen as a leader, it takes a lot of responsibility to be a leader. And it requires more of you than simply checking a box and going through a checklist to make sure that A, B, and C are done in the appropriate order, in the appropriate way. So, we're going to dive into that so that we can get a better understanding as to what leadership is. A lot of people are simply chasing leadership roles, but it's more than just being a boss and making decisions or even calling the shots. A lot of people, and including myself, we like the big offices, but we're in a different economy today. We're in a different work environment. And it's not simply about having the big corner office, having even the reserved parking spaces and the large salary. Being a leader requires something of you, and it requires that people be comfortable around you, that they be able to follow you. And there are certain skills that you need to possess in order to be an effective leader. Anyone can be given a title, and I'm sure you recognize that. And, if you think about it, you can recognize some times in your career where you've seen people be put in leadership positions and they had about as much leadership skill as a piece of sandpaper, and all they did was rub people the wrong way. Well, you want to definitely not be in that type of position where people hate to see you coming and they don't even understand why or how you were able to get that position. So let's think about this a little more broadly. Leadership is not management. It is not simply managing a checklist. You must come to a leadership role with vision, with character, and with influence. If people are not willing to listen to what you have to say, or let's go beyond that, they're willing to listen to what you have to say, but you're not persuasive, you're not engaging, you provide no reason as to why someone should want to take up the mantle or take up the banner and follow you. Well, then you might have a problem. Okay. So these are some of the these are three core things to do if you want to be a good leader. You got to lead with vision. Leaders lead with vision and not simply tasks. A manager checks a box, but a leader sees beyond the to do list. Ask yourself this: where are we going and why does it matter? If you want to be a leader, you have to have a vision for yourself. And if you don't have a vision for yourself, why would anybody be interested in following you? That's going to be really important. And depending upon where you are in an organization, that is definitely going to play into the type of action that you might need to take in order to roll out a vision. Because I've worked in large organizations and I've worked in small organizations. You can have a vision within a vision. There might be a greater overarching vision that the president of an organization has laid out and says that this is the direction in which we're going, this is where I see us. And then it's up to the executives and the directors and the lower level managers to help to roll out the steps and the action items in order to achieve that vision. But you can still have a vision for your own team as far as what you want that team to look like. And I can say that I've even done this for myself. I created a vision for my team because I had a fairly new team. They were somewhat inexperienced. within the industry. And I knew that if I didn't provide a vision for them, then we might run into some problems because we had some major tasks that were on the horizon and I had to act fast. And so I built out a vision for the team. And part of that vision was I wanted them to be a highly performing, competent team that operates with foresight, autonomy, and expertise. That was what I saw for my team. And when I would address them, I addressed them as professionals because I knew that they were professionals. They just needed a little bit of assistance to help them realize their true potential in that regard. I wanted them to have a level of independence so that they would feel comfortable working on their own. Because again, I don't like to micromanage, and that's a lot of what managers do is micromanage. I don't need to know every jot and tittle of work that you're doing on a daily basis. I need to know that you are capable and mature enough to handle your role and to notify me if there is something that needs to be renegotiated, like a deadline or something along those lines. Number two, leaders build people, not processes. Now, this is not to say that a leader will not be active in helping to build out processes, but their primary focus is to build people up. One of the things that I like to say is that I want people to operate at the top of their license. So whether that license is some type of certification or degree or anything that requires them to have some level of testing to do their job. So if you have to have a degree in accounting or finance or whatever the case may be, I don't want you as an employee to have to focus on data entry type tasks because that's not helping you to operate at the top of your certification or your degree. It's going to be really important that you be able to recognize that because you want to try to get the most out of people, which is going to help them to enhance their skill set. And if you're doing that, it also allows them to see what they can do versus what they had been doing in the past. So let's make sure that we keep that in focus because managers are really more focused on managing systems and leaders are really focused on helping to develop people because you have to have people to carry out the vision. Okay, so that's really what that comes down to. And I can give you another example because a lot of people want to be developed. And so there are missed opportunities if you do not avail yourself to helping to develop them. Because if they're looking to you to assist them with that process, that might be a clue that maybe you are a leader or you're, what is the word that I want to use? You're a burgeoning leader because people might see things in you. And because they see certain skills in you, they have a desire to want to know more from you and so they will avail themselves to your advice and your counsel. And this is an example that I have because I had an employee in the past who asked me a question: how do they get noticed at work? And this person did not report directly to me, even though they were on my team. We had a middle manager between the two of us. But they asked. And so the advice that I gave them was anytime that you are in a meeting and you want to make sure that people are aware that you are actually participating in the meeting, or you want more people to know who you are and what you do, you should ask questions. And it doesn't matter what the question is as long as it's related to the topic at hand. So you want to ask the question within the time frame before they move on to another topic. And it doesn't matter again if people are interested in making themselves known and having their voices heard, well then you're going to have to use your voice and figure out the appropriate time to do that. And I know that it was effective because I heard from another person within that organization that this person is starting to ask more questions. They're starting to be more visible and audible, which is a good thing, which meant that that person took the advice that I gave to them and they implemented it and it was beginning to work. So again, the point is that leaders build people because they can see the potential in a person and they want to help build out a strategy or a roadmap, I guess, to help that person to accomplish the very goals that they might even set for themselves. Now, the next one, or number three, leaders make decisions that empower other people. Leaders share the power, whereas managers, they hoard power. Managers are not interested in sharing a lot of information or sharing authority. They want everything to run and come through them. But a leader is definitely interested in sharing the power because, again, most a true, genuine leader is not interested in micromanaging. They want to make sure that when they have the discussion, they have the meeting, that everybody is on the same page, everybody knows what it is that's necessary to get done, and everything does not have to funnel itself right back through them. Now, of course, there might be policies in place. There's hierarchy and obligational authority within organizations that say that, this person over here has to do this person over there has to do this. Okay, we get it. But when it comes to those things that are not necessarily written out in policies, it's okay to share a power. It's okay to share the authority. We're not talking about giving them a blank check with the signatory authority. And so this is why it's really important that you understand and assess where you are. If you want to be a leader, if and you're already a manager, ask yourself this question. How do I feel or what do I think anytime hear or recognize that someone on my team has made a decision that I was not involved in? Depending on what that situation is, if you got upset or maybe even offended, then maybe all you're doing is being a manager. If it doesn't matter that that person made the decision and it was a good decision, it helped to move the process forward, then what is the harm in doing that? Don't allow yourself to get caught up because you want to be the only one in authority. Really, all you've done is allowed the power to go to your head, and no one really wants to work for a manager who behaves and thinks like that. Okay, so now that we've talked about these earlier three qualifications, I think that one of the things that should be at the top of the list for any great leader is humility. And I'm going to qualify it by saying humility without insecurity. Or another way to say that would be humility with confidence. Confident in knowing that what you bring to the table is valuable and it's important and is worthy of notice. When you're having a meeting, you're presenting information, you know what you know. Other people may know what you know, but they know it from their perspective and not yours. And the reason why you're in the leadership role or trying to get into the leadership role is because you believe that you can bring value to that scenario in a much different way than maybe someone else can. So the two are not diametrically opposed. And I think one of the other things that helps to underscore that is vulnerability. You have to be able to demonstrate a level of vulnerability if you want people to be able to relate to you. Everyone is vulnerable, but not everyone is humble. I'm sure you can probably even think about your own work experience in working under certain managers and or leaders and recognizing that there were some who just did not demonstrate any level of humility, and it really stinks, and nobody really wants to be around or be led by the leader who does not demonstrate that. When the two become divorced from one another, and by the two I mean humility and vulnerability, I think oftentimes what can happen is that people go into self-preservation mode, and then you really start to see some unbecoming behaviors that should really disqualify people from being leaders. But oftentimes, they're able to get by maybe because of who they know or what they know. And sometimes we're valuing what we think a person can bring more than the person themselves and what they're doing to the overall culture and the business, uh, that is supposed to be served by this leader. And okay, so another thing that I think is important to detail is self regulation. You have to have the ability to self regulate. This is one of those things that really falls together with emotional intelligence. You got to be able to read a room, you have to be able to exercise discipline over your own. Emotions and the expression of those emotions. Because when you're a leader, and it doesn't matter at what level of the organization that you're serving in, leadership comes with a lot of responsibility and some pretty heavy burdens depending on how high up the ladder you're climbing. You're going to find yourself being triggered by some things that are either done or said, and you have to know beforehand how you are going to handle those high stress moments, things that are going to trigger you. And being able to pull back and evaluate and then address it, it's going to work for you rather than against you. And that is one of the things that I think is really important. Okay, and finally, I think one of the other qualifications or characteristics that a leader should possess is the ability to say, I don't know. That goes a long way. As a leader, because you're trying to influence people, you can exercise greater influence with people if you demonstrate that you are trustworthy and that you're willing to admit that there's something that you're just not clear about, and that you have to do some additional digging and some additional research in order to come to a conclusion and provide whatever details might be necessary to help make a decision or whatever the case may be. But you want to be able to demonstrate that you can be trusted. If you know everything, you might know nothing. I think that it's important to have these additional three qualifications. And to be sure, there are so many other qualifications that go along with being a good leader. And we didn't even touch the surface, really. Or actually, we didn't even get to a lot of the other good qualifications. But the one that I'm going to wrap it up with that I think also is important is listening ability. A good leader is a good listener. They're observant, they're listening, they're trying to understand the information that is being provided to them. And it doesn't matter from whom. You don't want to just surround yourself by the people who are laterally um, complimentary to you. You want to listen to the people above you and you want to listen to the people below you. If you're not listening, you're not gaining any additional insight. And you definitely don't want to surround yourself with yes men. You want to hear from people who have thoughts and opinions that differ from yours so that you can question, well, why is that? Because they might have some valid information that can be helpful to you as you're continuing to climb that leadership ladder, or as you're trying to actually get in to those settings where you can become a leader. So take these things for what they are. These are just tips that can assist you as you're either trying to better yourself as a leader or you're trying to get into leadership roles. And these are some things that I think will be very helpful to you. I can tell you that from my own personal experience, I've had to use all of these things plus, and humility is definitely one I would say that's at the top of my list because I think all of us at some point in our careers has had to eat some humble pie. And if you've been blessed or fortunate enough, you haven't had to eat a whole lot of it. You have to learn from the mistakes that have been at your own hand. And you want to learn from the good feedback of others. And you definitely want to take the opportunity if you have leadership that is around you and they're demonstrating some characteristics that you would like to demonstrate yourself or incorporate into your own thinking and behavior. Well, reach out to those people. People love to talk about the things that help them in their career. All you have to do is ask. So we're going to close with that. I really do hope that you heard something that challenged you. And if you did, reflect on it, decide, and move. The choice is completely up to you. And additionally, if you have a story that you would like to share or a crossroads that you've navigated recently or in the not so distant past, I would love to hear about it because I would like to share it maybe on a future podcast. So reach out to me at theshanita.brown@gmail.com. And remember, crossroads reveal who you are, catalysts shape who you become. So be relentless. Until next time.